Okay, the first step you need to do is to layer your fleece and your quilt. There's various qualities of quilt. This is a really nice thick fleece. Some fleece, like the fleece you buy at Walmart, is thinner than others. Here, let's have the edge show there. Yeah, that's good. Flatten it out. Some of the fleeces you buy at Walmart are real thin. They're not bad, but they are real thin. This is a real nice, thick fleece. You take the quilt top that we've pinned down. Oh, we've got to do that again. Pin down the pillow. This time we'll put our hands underneath and make sure we don't catch something. Oh, here. There we go. That keeps it from flopping all over the place while you're trying to turn it over and down. You notice my table's just a little bit small. Some of you may be working at home, and I'm going to be showing you how to work it when your table's a little bit small. There, we got to make sure that there's some fleece sticking out around every edge. There, perfect, perfect. So, I put then pins around the edge. Put the pins in at right angle to the edges for when you're sewing on your sewing machine. That way if you run over it accidentally, which you should not sew over a pin, it's less likely to cause damage to your machine. When you're sewing it later, you're going to leave an opening on the end opposite from the pillow attachment. That's the end where Wally is. There's a pillow attachment there. We'll leave an opening for sewing, or for turning it right side out, I mean. Looking good. Wally's almost done over there. So then, because we need to do the other end, and I'll show you doing this by myself, since that's what you probably will be doing, is doing it by yourself. Okay, so we level it all out. Again, it's all on the table again. This way it ends up flat on all sides. You don't pull it too tight because that way it'll pucker. So you leave it all kind of relaxed as you're stretching it out. Any extra fabric, usually, as they say in sewing, it'll quilt out. So just leave it relaxed so it doesn't pucker. So Wally's doing pretty well. I mean, I don't think he's ever done this before. Fleece is very forgiving for doing quilting for the first time. And that's that for pinning it. The next step is sewing it. I will be starting at this point, which reinforces where there's a seam here, and ending here. That will give me an opening for turning it. That's not too big, but big enough. So I have sewn this one all the way around. I've trimmed the excess fabric down to about half an inch, 3/8 of an inch from the seam. And I have trimmed the corners at a 45-degree angle to make that easier to turn. Done that for all the corners. Now for actually turning it, to try to get this where I can show you, before you turn it, this is a great tool, by the way, I don't know the name of it. You take and you finger press. You can use your fingers to do this, finger press, or use a tool like this to press the edge down. That helps for the next step after you turn it. So we've got that all finger pressed down. Now you literally are just going to be turning this right side out. I start with the closest corners first to keep there from being too much strain on the opening. It's actually kind of fun to turn it right side out because it's like it's halfway there to actually being a blanket. And just gently, just pull from different angles like this. Doesn't put too much strain on the opening if you do it very gently this way. There. Then you reach in through the opening and using this fancy dancy tool, you turn the corners. And they come out pretty good if you did a nice trim on the corners. And there we go, the corners are turned. Kind of open it up. We're getting there. At this point, we unpin the pillow. And we prepare the opening for closing. Because you've done the pre-crease, it'll make it easier to turn. So I put a pin at the beginning, and a pin at the end because I've found that that helps with the turning. Turn the fleece down. And I put quite a few because I really don't want this to be moving and shifting while we do the edge. When you get done with this, if you do it the way I show you, you won't be able to tell that there was ever an opening there. So what we do is I've laid it out and flattened it, and as you can see, it's not real flat on this side. So we will pull this out and flatten this on this side again to make sure that it's fairly flat, pulling it, moving it until it's fairly flat. We want to do away from the edge, Wally, because if you do away from the edge, you're not going to get a weird bunching up at the edge. So that looks pretty good. And then at this point, I'm going to pull it back again to make sure it's still flat and it looks really good. Now, Wally and I are going to baste. Here's a needle, and here's the thread. And what we'll do is what's called spoon basting. When I'm by myself, I will do the lengthwise, but since Wally and I will be demonstrating today, and Wally can show you that it's not too terribly tough, we will baste on the edge. So I need to go ahead and use one that will go all the way across and a little bit. Let's see how that works for Wally, because I'm an old hand at this, so and I will thread your needle because I don't imagine you've done that before either, or recently. That's pretty good. I could do that and see to do that. You want to make a great big knot so that you can find it and so that it will hold. The nice thing about the spoon is that the needle comes up and into the spoon and you can grab it there. I don't pull it through all the way every time. About every third pull or so. You notice I'm taking great big stitches. This is only just to hold the layers. Want to give it a try, Wally?
Sure.
Oh, so we pull this way, make sure. So give that a try. Yeah, take big stitches. There you go. You can move the spoon once you get a hold of it. So the more you do it, the easier it gets. See, Wally's doing a great job, and he's never handled any of this before. Sewing the opening closed and sewing around the edge. Okay, I use, on this sewing machine, is about a 3mm stitch. And I think that's probably about an 8 to 10 size stitch on other machines. Okay, starting just before the pin, I start stitching just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And this part I need to remove the pin before I sew over it. And as you saw before, I put in quite a few to make sure that the opening stays closed the way I want. I want to see the bottom, the fleece side, just a little bit, but not too much. We go ahead and we sew all the way around the edge, just to keep a nice edge through all the washings that this might end up getting in the long run. Hopefully it's used and loved to death. This tool comes in handy again, because if I pre-crease the fabric and then run it underneath, I get just the edge I want. Okay, sewing just so a little bit of the fleece, we want to sew so a little bit of the fleece shows, but not too much. I find it easiest if I use this tool to pre-crease, and then it tucks the fleece in just the right amount as I move around. It's a great tool. I don't know what it's called. Should have found that out before I did this. You know, you just buy tools. Oh, that will work. I think it looks like the bone of a fish. Probably what they had to start with. This point didn't come all the way out there, so using one of my heavier needles, pull it out a little bit more. Okay. So, turn the corner. and continue sewing down the side. Okay, I've sewn, go around all the edge, and now I'm at the edge where the pillow is. We want to continue there, but you need to be careful. I reach underneath to pull the fleece a little bit to make sure that when we're sewing across the area where the pillow is, that we're not catching any of the pillow up in the stitching. You can feel that from the top as well. Pull it out, make sure that it's right. This gives it a little extra strength. Reinforce it where you can. Stitch a little, make a little adjustment, get it right. Don't try to sew too far, because I'll guarantee you that if you're going to have it catch up on something or mess it up, it's when you get into too much of a hurry. Been there, done that. Try not to do it again. So continue sewing. And continue sewing around till you meet up where you started, and then you're done. The pillow top is still hanging free. We need that. The last thing we do is sew that down. I sewed the edge all along through here. That strengthens that whole section. All around the edge I've sewn. So now we're going to do quilting or tying. Some people tie the quilts. It's kind of fast. It's done pretty quickly. With fleece, you don't have to tie too frequently. I don't tie quilts anymore because when you wash them, they don't hold up well through the laundry. So I quilt all the quilts. The quilt that I made for Meredith still looks just like I just made it, and it's been 13 years or so. This one is quilted, not very frequently, but I quilted just an X across this way, and then I quilted in the ditch along the lines here. You can quilt it more frequently. It's better if you do, but that's all that's really necessary to hold it down. If you decide to quilt, it's best if you baste it first. I sometimes get lazy and pin it all up, and then I'm constantly hurting myself and drawing blood. So basting's a lot better. Okay, so this one I have done most of the quilting on. You can see this one I decided, because it was such an overall pattern, I just did an overall quilting. So I'm ending up with it only being about 3 inches square on here. That's the best. And it looks great, and will hold it, and it'll last. It lasts like iron. So and you're thinking, how can I get all that through the sewing machine? I've done, my son's wedding quilt was 110 inches by 110 inches, and I quilted it on this sewing machine. So all you need to do is constant adjustment. You roll it up. This overall pattern, I've gone round and round and round. Start out, you don't do a back stitch. You do some about 4 or 5 very small stitches. I think it's about 12 to 15 on an older Singer. On a newer metric machine, it's about a 1 millimeter stitch. Grab a hold of bobbin and top thread and stitch those 4. Then you increase the stitch size to about an 8 to 10 stitches per inch on an American machine, or a 3 on a metric. I use these gloves. They give me a little bit more traction without being too warm. They have rubberized ends, but you can get those at Quality Sewing. For this one, I just sew from corner to corner. It's one of the nice things about this kind of pattern. You've kind of already got a marked grid on it. Kind of stretch it out so that it lays flat. When you're first starting, you've got the basting that holds all the layers in place, and then later as you stitch you can remove that because you'll have the other stitching helping you. Okay, now I'm going to take a long route. I'm going to be turning a corner. Before I turn, I keep the needle down, keep the foot down, roll the quilt up. You can imagine how much work this is for a 110-inch quilt, just the rolling. Then I turn it, have it ready to go. Then I release the foot and turn it. Why? Just trust me, experience just shows that I have less problems. Now I've turned the corner and can continue. Because this is the last row on this, I can sew really fast. Spread it out. I only work that area. If you run out of bobbin thread in the middle, just start a new one right from where you were. Works fine. I always adjust with the needle down. Again, trust me, you don't want to do it with the needle up. That's where you're going to run into problems and have it end up being crooked. Some sewing machines are nice in that they always stop down or up according to your choice. But I've gotten a good habit going of not making an adjustment unless the needle is down. And as you can see, with it rolled up, it just comes right through the sewing machine. And as you can tell, you also want to make sure that you have a clean floor, because your quilt will end up on it. But having these rubberized tips on these gloves sure keeps your hands from getting tired. And finally, I end with about 4 or 5 of the small stitches, and that's it. This quilt is quilted. Here we go, trim thread both sides. Then we can go to the next step, which is sewing the pillow down. Do the final step of sewing it down. It goes to the back side, and we're going to sew it through all layers. I want it evened out. And you can use the quilting if you've done quilting, you can use the quilting to make sure that it's going to be in the right place on the right side. Put a pin there. Put a pin here. And do the same on the other side. You'll probably notice that I have made 3 the same. You notice these are all different. It's because I do have a way of making 3 of these quilts with very little waste, all of the same pattern. Okay, so I've rolled it up again because this is going to have to go in through the sewing machine. I always start sewing from that edge. Put my tools away. I'm going to sew here from the edge, put the needle down, probably about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, not too far. This I will use a back stitch for. I'll sew forward, grabbing both the top and the bottom. I'll sew forward a couple of stitches back. That gives it a little extra strength. Pin as often as you need. Make your adjustments as you move things around. Make your adjustments with the needle down. Sew up to the corner. At this point, I take a couple of stitches this way. Now I will turn it again, and having it at a slight angle back toward, I will take some back stitches. And then I take a couple of forward stitches again, and hopefully that makes a nice strong point so that it's less likely to tear and will last longer. Do the same thing on the other side. In my sewing room, I have a trash can right there for the threads as I go. Okay, again, starting at the edge. Couple of stitches forward, back at stitch. A little ways in from the edge. Always make your adjustments with the needle down. And back again up to the corner. Turn it slightly. Couple of stitches. Back stitch to the previous stitching, and then some forward stitches. And that should make a nice strong edge there. And see the corner that I made, and that I think should make it a little stronger, because turning it that's a weak spot, so that should make it a little bit stronger. Now folding. It's Meredith. She's just come for a surprise visit. So, surprise, surprise. Meredith showed up. It was totally unplanned for the filming of this today. I told you the story about how Meredith was a junior and was leaving town, and she was disappointed because she wasn't going to.
I wasn't going to get a Quillo.
Get a senior Quillo because you were leaving town.
Yeah. So they made me one and presented it to me special at church that weekend. And it meant a lot. I used to get to come and help make them before for a lot of the seniors, and I really enjoyed doing that. So it really meant a lot that I was able to get a Quillo. And I actually have to share mine now with my kids. They take it all the time. This is Jason.
Well, why is it that they want to steal it all the time?
Well, because mine is very special, George. It has Winnie the Pooh on the back of it, which is very special to me. My nickname was Piglet, always growing up. So
that's why it's good if you have a special senior in mind to find a quilt, a fleece that maybe speaks to something special about that particular senior.
Yes.
So that's always important. If you find that, that's great. Go to Joann's. They've got a ton of different kinds of fleece. So Piglet is back.
Piglet is back. Piglet. Hi, with piglets of her own.
So come on in. We're just showing how to fold it. Use the edge of the pillow as a guide. Having it on a flat surface helps, of course. And at that point, you turn it right side out, carefully. Tuck in those corners. Fold it in half, and then you can fold it in quarters this way. And then last but not least, carefully pull and tug into the corner. Flattening it out as you go. Of course, the more you do it, probably the better you're at it. I know some people, the ones I have are done real flat, so I think some people are better at it than I am. And there we are. Ready to go.